We're going to get started with the
clash.
Yes, continuing furore with Suella Braverman. So here she is in the Times. Police must be even-handed with protests. There's a perception that senior officers play favourites when it comes to protesters. This was in the Times a couple of days ago, and the furore has been continuing ever since. In this country, we pride ourselves on our long-established traditions of freedom of expression. These liberties consist not only in freedom of speech, but also in freedom of assembly, as she goes on to justify the UK government's intervention with the police in order to prevent freedom of speech and freedom of assembly with respect to a certain type of protest that we all know about, which is the Palestinian protests that are going on each Saturday at the moment. Now, of course, this is all about the fact that tomorrow is Armistice Day, and therefore this is being ramped up to be create some kind of conflict between Palestinian peace protesters and everybody else. And just to give another example of the kind of rhetoric that we're seeing in some sections of the media at the moment, this was Nigel Farage's programme, and we are looking at Stephen Barrett here, the barrister.
What we have seen is successive weekly protests in London getting more and more violent. The one last Saturday involved direct assault of people in military uniform.
Now, that is simply a lie. Now, we were there, as we said on Monday's programme. We were at the protest last Saturday. And in fact, we saw the military in uniform outside the Admiralty Bar at Trafalgar Square. These were submariners who had been commemorating their own commemoration for war dead. Well, I'm just going to show, if we just put this on screen, this is a tweet that went out claiming as two young British servicemen walk through Trafalgar Square, they were on the receiving end of some abusive language, with the man on the right in the frame making a spitting motion towards them. Out of frame, he reached for my phone as I walked past. So let's just have a look at a short little piece of video here, which was embedded in this tweet. Now, Brian, perhaps you can help me out here because I'm struggling to hear the abusive language, and I certainly didn't see, okay, there was a spitting motion, but there was no sign of abuse there or assault. And I mean, frankly, were these guys running through the raging mob or were they walking calmly, chatting as people watched them walk past? I mean, I just think the characterization of this is appalling.
Well, they were walking very calmly, Mike, but of course, when we were at the event, you saw my astonishment when I saw military personnel in uniform so close to this protest. And I was astonished at how relaxed they were, sitting outside sitting and standing outside the pub, enjoying a pint within feet of what was supposed to be a violent protest. So I showed astonishment. And then later in the day, as the light faded, we watched these men in uniform, or some of them at least, walk through the edge of the crowd in order to go wherever they were going, and they did so quite freely and happily. My mind went back to the late 70s, early 80s, when servicemen could be attacked or beaten up in nightclubs simply because they had short hair and could be identified as servicemen. So this is propaganda. It's trying to inflame the situation. My other comment is that if our military are now so precious they can't take a little bit of pushback from the public, then we need to think again. But if we go back to that period, late 70s, early 1980s, often a lot of trouble simply with servicemen going into local pubs or discos to enjoy themselves. And if the numbers were in favour of the local population, quite often those military guys could be assaulted by members of the normal British public. So this is complete nonsense in my book.
Absolutely. So let's look at some more propaganda here. This is Mail Online, where your poppy with pride. MPs say people are too nervous to wear the symbol of remembrance over fears of a backlash. as nation rallies around Royal British Legion volunteers are too terrified to raise cash amid tensions with pro-Palestine protesters. This is all designed to ramp up a narrative of anger with a view to getting people out on the streets tomorrow. So just let's remember that the government has made a very serious effort to interfere with police operations. We had this on Monday's programme. This is Rishi Sunak's letter to the Chief Constable of Metropolitan Police, basically attempting to interfere while still trying to maintain that decisions are rightly operationally independent from politicians. This is the narrative, and we got to consider what the implications are of the British government attempting to force operational decisions on the police. And let's just put this in the context of the kind of legislation that we've seen in the last couple of years. The shutdown of free speech through the Online Safety Act, the National Security Act, the Media Bill, which is coming in the next Parliament, the criminalisation of protests through the Police Crime Court Sentencing Act and the Public Order Act, the effect on free elections in the Elections Act, the unaccountability in law through the Judicial Review and Courts Act, the Human Covert Intelligence Criminal Conduct Act, our rights removed. Well, the Bill of Rights bill has been withdrawn now in July this year, so they're not going to continue with that. And the fact that they can now strip citizenship through the Nationality and Borders Act. So we have this situation. We've got to take these things in the round, not look at any single piece of legislation, but let's just remind ourselves what was in the King's Speech, the Criminal Justice Bill. This is going to allow the police to enter your property without a warrant under certain circumstances. That's a slippery slope to begin heading down. The Investigatory Powers Amendment Bill, this is, again, an expansion of investigatory powers and surveillance in the state, just running through a couple of these others that are less important in this context. And the Media Bill we've already mentioned. So we are in a pretty serious situation here. And if the government attempts to take control of police operational decisions, this is really a dictatorship. But finally, I just want to let everybody know that Charles Mallet, former military, former policeman, has published an article on the UK Column website entitled Israel-Hamas Conflict. Some Home Secretary picks a side for the police. And the key point about this is to consider what it actually means operationally for the police if the government interferes in this way. But Brian, what about the Poppy remembrance issue itself?
Well, I just wanted to make a little bit of quick comment here, if we could pop this image up on screen, because I want to say to the audience, as an ex-serviceman and a person who has lost family members in times gone by in the First World War and the Second World War, I am appalled at people attempting to use war dead as a political lever. So I remember the dead. I have poppies growing in my garden. This is a picture of them here in the breeze. And I just want to say to people, I think it's completely wrong that British war dead are being used as a political weapon, principally by the politicians, in order to carry out their agenda and allow further wars overseas. So that's my personal position.